Hey guys, this video is going to be about the Rothschilds. Let me just dive right into it. This is former Facebook executive Chamath Palihapitiya, and he says 150 men rule the world.
I'm thinking there's a deep connection between money as an instrument of change and what you're doing now at Social Capital.
Look, here's the thing. There's about 150 people that run the world. Anybody who wants to go into politics, they're all fucking puppets, okay? There are 150, and they're all men that run the world, period, full stop. They control most of the important assets. They control the money flows. And these are not the tech entrepreneurs. Now, they are going to get rolled over the next 5 to 10 years by the people that are really underneath pulling the strings. And when you get behind the curtain and see how that world works, what you realize is it is unfairly set up for them and their progeny.
Okay, now this guy would know. Here's an article from NPR. It's entitled World's Richest People Meet, Muse on How to Spread the Wealth, published May 27th, 2014. Prince Charles talks to Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, left, organizer of the Conference on Inclusive Capitalism, and Christine Lagarde, head of the International Monetary Fund, before Tuesday's conference. Talk of economic mobility and the wealth gap is hardly new, from the Occupy movement to President Obama's re-election campaign. Income inequality has been in the spotlight for years. Even so, the, quote, Inclusive Capitalism Conference in London on Tuesday broke new grounds, not because of the conversation, but because of the people having it. The 250 people from around the world invited to attend this one-day conference do not represent the 99% or even the 1%. It's more like a tiny fraction of the 1%. We have 30 trillion of assets under management in this room, says conference organizer Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, who runs E.L. Rothschild, a major investment firm she and her husband of the storied Rothschild banking family founded in 2003. That amount, 30 trillion, is roughly 1/3 of the total investable wealth in the world. Just to give you a little perspective, this is our current U.S. debt, 27 trillion. If this bulk of capital decides that they are going to invest in companies that aren't only thinking about the short-term profit, says Rothschild, then we will see corporate behavior change. The titans of commerce and finance didn't necessarily fly to this meeting in London out of a sense of ethics or moral duty, though that may have been a motivation for some. For many, says Rothschild, it's a sense of self-preservation. Very telling. Capitalism appears to be under siege. It's true that the business of business is not to solve society's problems, she says, but it is really dangerous for business when business is viewed as one of society's problems, and that's where we are today. So they literally admit they don't have your best interests at mind, and it's all about self-preservation, and they control the world's wealth. About 250 people, actually. This guy says 150 people. They say 250 people. But at the end of the day, what the significance of it is that people who claim conspiracy theorists are crazy and, oh, you think there's a secret group of people running the world behind the scenes. No, it's not that I think that, it's that I know that, it's that I can prove that, and it's that you refuse to accept that because it goes against your view of what you've been told reality is, crafted by the very same people I'm talking about, who own all the media. Specifically the Rothschilds. Selected, not elected. Rothschild holds $100,000 a plate dinner fundraiser for, guess who? Hillary, Washington, D.C., providing even more proof that she is simply a puppet for the ruling oligarchy on Thursday. Hillary Clinton attended a $100,000 a head fundraiser hosted by none other than Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, a prominent New York businesswoman and supporter of Miss Clinton. More proof she is simply a puppet. What did this guy say?
I'm thinking there's a deep connection between money as an instrument of change and what you're doing now at Social Capital.
Look, here's the thing. There's about 150 people that run the world. Anybody who wants to go into politics, they're all fucking puppets.
Okay. Let's get into this article. The Rothschild banking dynasty is a family line that has been accused of pulling the political strings of many different governments through their control of various economic systems throughout the world. Historically, there is ample evidence to prove that the family has used its vast fortune to control the political apparatus of numerous nations throughout history, toppling regimes and bringing entire countries to their knees. Although the Rothschild family now keeps a very low public profile, they still have significant business operations across a wide spectrum of sectors. While you may not find any one particular Rothschild on the Forbes Most Rich list, the family is estimated to control $1 trillion in assets across the globe, thus having an extremely strong voice across the geopolitical economic spectrum that many perceive as a hidden hand manipulating events silently from behind a veil of secrecy and silence. Just before I finish this article, here's a list off Investopedia of the 10 wealthiest families in the world. You can check this out yourself. The Rothschilds aren't mentioned at all. In fact, you have the Walton family with an estimated 1/10 of their wealth listed at number 1. You have the Mars family, the Koch brothers, the Saud family. You have no mention of the Rothschilds, right? In this article, it talks about how they like to keep a very low public profile. Why is that? Why is it that they're organizing events for supposedly the most influential and rich people? They're the organizers of it, and they want to keep a low public profile. It's almost like they don't want you to know that they control everything, right? It's almost like they don't want you to know that they control and own the Federal Reserve, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, all of these banks. They own all the banks in the world, pretty much. In March, the Free Thought Project examined WikiLeaks' searchable archive of Clinton's emails and found intimations of a close relationship with the infamous Rothschild family. Lynn Forster de Rothschild, this bitch right here, which, wrote in an email on April 18th, 2010, in which she tells Hillary she would love to catch up, and I remain your loyal, adoring pal. Clinton responds, let's make that happen, and signs the response, much love, H. On September 23, 2010, Clinton emailed Lynn Forster to Rothschild an email chain marked by heavy redactions saying, I was trying to reach you to tell you and Teddy, that I asked Tony Blair to go to Israel as part of our full court press on keeping the Middle East negotiations going. Rothschild responds, thanking Clinton for personally reaching out to us and adds, you are the best, and we remain your biggest fans. That probably equates to large amounts of money. This correspondence gives the greatest insight into the fact that the Rothschild family works behind the scenes to use their enormous clout to forward a geopolitical agenda, using their bought and paid for politicians as a means to an end. A January 9th, 2012 email discusses a conference on the environment set to take place at Jacob Rothschild's historic estate, Waddesdon. It's clear that while Hillary Clinton is a politician who often attempts to publicly portray herself as a candidate looking out for the best interests of the common American people, a notion that has been widely challenged during this election cycle due to her adamant refusal to release the transcripts of her 12 speeches to various Wall Street institutions, for which she received almost $3 million in compensation, a sum greater than most Americans will earn in their lifetimes. On the same day as the Rothschild fundraiser, Maureen White and Steve Ratner, two prominent Democratic fundraisers, also hosted a six-figure fundraiser at their Manhattan home for Clinton, which cost donors a minimum of $100,000 to attend, which Clinton did, according to the Wall Street Journal. The evidence of politicians for sale to the highest bidder lends credibility to a 2014 study from Princeton University that revealed the U.S. is not a republic or a democracy, but rather an oligarchy. An oligarchy is a form of government in which power resides in the hands of a small number of elites within society. For ruling class politicians to disingenuously act as if they are simple representatives of the people when they clearly act in the interest of the billion-dollar oligarchs who finance their political adventurism reveals a political system that clearly lacks legitimacy. The hijacking of the U.S. levers of power by a handful of elite families and institutions using crony politicians such as Clinton is unmistakable. Now, if you'd like to go to the WikiLeaks site, type in Rothschild as a keyword and search for those emails yourself, you can. I'm not going to bring them up, but they are real. They're not up for debate. Okay? Now, what was going on with that whole Russiagate thing, right? Russiagate. They said it was fake, right? They said that the Trump campaign wasn't being spied on, etc., etc., etc. Well, we now know that not to be true. But let me read an article by a Mr. Mike Rothschild, working for the Daily Dot. I'm going to get into him in a second, but this is why I actually started to make this video, is because I saw a QAnon video yesterday, which I disagreed with for the most part. They talked about how Clinton was the center of all of this and how she meets with, banks in secret. And they mentioned Goldman Sachs by name, which, if you know Trump, he actually appointed Steve Mnuchin, a guy who worked at Goldman Sachs for 17 years and whose father, Robert, was a partner. And I believe Mnuchin reached the rank of chief information officer during his time there. So he's a crony just like, all these other people. But my point is the Rothschilds are involved with Trump and involved with Hillary. But I'm starting to question Q, and I'll get in that in a second. But this is an article by Mike Rothschild. The 2016 election shows just how hard it is to kill a conspiracy theory. Long after conspiracy theories are conclusively proven to not be true, they can still find believers all over the internet. Disinformation might make the theory less attractive to the mainstream, but the mainstream is not the intended audience, because once you believe in a conspiracy theory, you tend to believe it for good. Recently, we've seen it in one of the longest-running conspiracy theories of the Trump era, the complex web of FISA abuses that supposedly were going to be revealed in the Department of Justice Inspector General's report on the origins of the Russia investigation. The findings of the report had been hyped for well over a year by right-wing pundits who believed it would be the vindication of the president's conspiracy theory that the Obama administration spied on him. And in December, the report was finally released to an audience primed to believe it would be earth-shattering. It was not. The report made it clear that while there are FBI errors in the FISA application process and a judge stepped in to order them fixed, the conspiracy theories were just that. The Trump campaign was not illegally spied on. The Russia investigation was completely legitimate. Trump Tower wasn't wired up for recording, and there was no conspiracy in the FBI to bring Trump down, nor was there a master plan to ensure Hillary Clinton's victory. Okay, Mr. Rothschild. Here's an article off Greg Jarrett, thegregjarrett.com. Hillary Clinton allegedly approved Russiagate falsehood as distraction from the email scandal. This was published 4 days ago. Released information of Clinton corruption is the gift that keeps on giving, if only their actions weren't so poisonous for our country. The latest bombshell is that Hillary Clinton personally signed off on the Russiagate farce to distract attention from her email scandal, according to a Russian intelligence analysis that was obtained by U.S. intelligence agencies in July 2016, reports the National Review. The allegation comes from National Intelligence Director John Ratcliffe, who wrote a letter to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham. The letter asserts, quote, that in late July 2016, American intelligence agencies obtained insight into an analysis by Russian spies, which alleged that Democratic U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton had approved a plan to stir up a scandal against her Republican opponent Donald Trump. Furthermore, that plan involved tying Trump to Putin and the Russians' hacking of the Democratic National Committee. Ratcliffe's letter also states the U.S. intelligence community, quote, does not know the accuracy of the allegation that Mrs. Clinton personally orchestrated the collusion scandal, nor can our agency say whether the Russian intelligence analysis in question is disinformation. Nevertheless, this allegation about Clinton's role was obviously known to the Obama administration at the time. Ratcliffe also mentions handwritten notes from former CIA Director John Brennan, showing that Brennan briefed President Obama and other senior national security officials about the intelligence, including the, quote, alleged approval by Hillary Clinton on July 26, 2016, of a proposal from one of her foreign policy advisors to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal claiming interference by Russian security services. National Review helps to put this information in context. Mrs. Clinton was cleared of criminal charges in a July 5, 2016 press conference by then-Director Comey. This prompted outrage over whether the Obama administration had distorted the criminal law applicable to mishandling classified information in order to give Clinton a pass. The email scandal would dog Clinton throughout the campaign. Less than 3 weeks after Comey's press conference on July 22nd, the hacked DNC emails began to be published. On July 25th, 2016, the Democratic National Convention began in Philadelphia. By that point, former British spy Christopher Steele had been commissioned by the Clinton campaign to compile research tying Trump to Russia. However, Steele's London-based company worked with Russian oligarchs. One of Steele's most heavily used sources was Igor Danchenko, who was investigated by the FBI from 2009 to 2010 on suspicion of being a Russian spy, days after the hacked DNC emails began being published. Steele also generated a dossier report alleging that Trump was in a well-developed conspiracy of cooperation with Russian leadership, reports National Review. It all matches up just a little too perfectly. Now, I can't find the letter. I probably can, but I'm not going to pull it up. You can find it, but you can find the Ratcliffe letter. It was all over Twitter and everything. But yeah, so Hillary Clinton worked with Rothschild to concoct the plan against Trump. But this guy, this guy, Mike Rothschild, just so happens to say in his article, and he writes a lot of these articles, by the way. He only covers conspiracy theories specifically, and he's written 2 books. Written one, co-written the other. But he's saying that it was completely legitimate. The Russian investigation was completely legitimate. Trump was not spied on illegally, and blah, blah, blah. So let's go to Mr. Mike Rothschild's page on the Daily Dot, right? See if I can load this up. Mike Rothschild is a writer who specializes in researching and debunking conspiracy theories and fringe beliefs. He also writes politics, history, and breaking news. I wonder why this guy would go out of his way to try to debunk stuff with the last name Rothschild when his family quite literally owns the politicians and most of the wealth in the world and aren't listed on the wealthiest families in the world because they like to keep a low profile. This guy says that less than 150 people control the world and pull strings behind the scenes. This guy right here, handsome guy, huh? This guy right here is a conspiracy theory debunker writing a book about QAnon for Melville House. This guy seems to go out of his way to attack QAnon. I didn't believe QAnon, I still don't, but I'll tell you why I'm starting to perhaps have different thoughts about it. And that's because when I read all these things about Q, I already know Trump supports Israel. I already know he's got a bunch of people who are supposedly, quote unquote, deep state in his own personal cabinet, specifically Steve Mnuchin, among others. So that's why I thought Trump was a Zionist. I thought, well, this guy's just as controlled as Biden, just as controlled as Clinton, blah, blah, blah. It's all political theater. But this guy is going so hard trying to debunk QAnon that it's very weird to me. And then you look at Trump disappearing October 1st, even after saying that powerful people waiting behind the scenes are going to try to take him out and he might disappear for a while. People are saying he's on a ship because the video that he released from Walter Reed shows the camera kind of moving around. Let me see if I can find this. All right, check this out.
They are so wealthy. They are so wealthy. Nobody has any idea who the hell they are, what they do. They make more money than the drug companies. You know, in all fairness, at least the drug companies have to produce a product, and it has to be a good product. But the middlemen, well, the rebate that I'm doing cuts out the middlemen and it reduces costs, and the money goes back to the people purchasing the drugs. So I have a lot of enemies out there. This may be the last time you'll see me for a while. A lot of very, very rich enemies, but they are not happy with what I'm doing. But I figure we have one chance to do it, and no other president's going to do what I do. No other president would do a favored nations, a rebate, a buy from other nations at much less cost. Nobody. And there are a lot of unhappy people, and they're very rich people, and they're very unhappy.
All right, that's a very ominous kind of thing to say. So if he is controlled by the Rothschilds, why would he take that action and then do that? That's what made me question it. Now, this guy seems to have like a real hard-on for Q and just conspiracy theories in general. And he's trying to debunk people who think COVID's control, blah. Like, this guy is a total shill. Absolute total shill. Like, there's no legitimacy to anything he says whatsoever. And you need to watch out for this guy. Now, when you actually go down his Twitter, let me see if I can find what I was trying. The conspiracy chart. I downloaded it because the picture is going to be too small on there for me to pull up. But this is what he actually has on his own Twitter page. It's basically saying that some conspiracies are reasonable, and the further you go up this, it's more unreasonable. So like, the Bohemian Club, MK Ultra, COINTELPRO, Operation Mockingbird, these things are reasonable. And then you start to go, we have questions. The JFK assassination, blah, blah, blah. Unequivocally false, but mostly harmless. Things like Bigfoot and blah, blah, blah. Dangerous to yourself and others. Jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams. It doesn't. Global warming hoax. It is. Finland doesn't exist. Never heard that. I think that's just something to make people look stupid, so they throw it in there. 5G, government-made diseases. That's not false. The government admittedly develops and weaponizes diseases in biolabs. That's a fact. I don't even know where they got that notion. Essential oils cure all illnesses. I don't know anyone who's ever said that. That's another one of those things they throw in there to make it look ridiculous. Anti-vaxxers, which obviously vaccines are poison. Anyone who's done any research on vaccines knows that. Soy boys, COVID-19 made in a lab, dinosaurs didn't exist, chemtrails. But what he puts up here where it says, world ruled by supreme shadow elites. Once you believe one, you usually believe most. Get help. So he really doesn't want you to think that there's a group of shadow elites running the world. And I just find that surprising, given his last name is Rothschild. He's a prominent journalist for the Daily Dot, and he specifically goes after people who believe in conspiracy theories. Why is that? Why is it that the Rothschild family is the richest family in the world, orchestrating events behind the scenes and not even listed on the world's richest families? This guy is a complete and total shill. Mike Rothschild, I'm calling you out personally. Go ahead, prove me wrong. Go ahead and concoct some bullshit article about how I'm wrong. You know I'm right, and that's why you're so nervous and frantic trying to write these articles. Now, if Trump isn't owned by the Rothschilds, and he is a supporter of Israel, I haven't heard him say he's a Zionist. Joe Biden has admitted he's a Zionist on camera, but I can't get anywhere saying Trump is a Zionist, which makes me think he is a nationalist, possibly. My whole theory was left and right, it doesn't matter, all politics are controlled, and Trump was the false nationalist card, meant to make all nationalists look stupid, etc., etc. I'm starting to think, what if I'm wrong? What if Trump, yeah, he supports Israel, but he's not a Zionist, and he is a nationalist who wants the best for our country. He wouldn't do things like this and then say that he has rich, powerful enemies behind the scenes, and he might disappear for a while. He wouldn't say things like that if he had the backing of Rothschild, which Hillary Clinton did. Hillary Clinton is close pals with Lynn Forrester to Rothschild. You know, I'm starting to think that there is the possibility I could be wrong and Trump is not lined up with the Rothschilds. If that's the case, I really hope I'm wrong and I will eat my words. If Q is real for any reason and there are going to be arrests happening, which I hope is the case, and maybe Trump isn't at Walter Reed and he's in some secure location because people have a hit out on him or whatever, I don't know. I guess we have to wait and see results. I'm still going to keep the same opinion of Q until proven otherwise, but this does make me definitely question it, and it makes me think, well, maybe he's not in line with the Rothschilds, and he's in line with other people who maybe want to take out the Rothschilds or to, remove them from their position of influence because they want to control it. I don't know. But it seems like he might genuinely be a nationalist. If that's the case, awesome. I support him. If it's not the case and he is a puppet, obviously I wouldn't, but we have to wait and see. But this is very interesting. The Rothschilds don't want you to know about their influence, clearly, but they are the richest people in the world, and they're not even listed on the top 10 richest families. That should make you go, huh. Because after all, it was the Rothschilds who funded people like the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts. They didn't build that wealth themselves. They got loans from people like the Rothschilds. So, something to think about.